Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Technology, Earth, and Personal Growth Show. With me today, I have Mr. Darling and Go. Darling is a close friend. He is a data scientist, an explorer, a naturalist, a technologist, and a wonderful human being all around. I am very fortunate to have met him in my adventures. And today we're going to talk about a topic that we're both pretty passionate about. It's, yeah, it's essentially nature and
Yeah,
data and a bit of Darling's journey because you're really going to want to know more about him once you get to know him. And, this is science. We don't have our PhDs yet. So keep in mind that we're not always
yeah,
right, but we try our best and we're learning and we're adjusting and we're thinking. And that's what's important in these conversations, in these explorations. We're going to navigate tons of cool ideas, tons of cool structures, and tons of what I think is wonderful knowledge that leads to an
yeah.
awesome lifestyle. So, darling, welcome.
Oh, yeah. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate the introduction, bro. That was pretty good. Just to clarify some things. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me on the podcast. Like Matt said, my name is Darling Goat. Now, formally, I'm not a data scientist, but I am a data scientist in training. And I'm a mycology enthusiast. I do not have a naturalist degree. Just to clarify, my passion falls more in line with mycology and its study. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, we are very both much passionate in data, just generally technology and its applications, and also nature and natural systems as well. So we find ourselves fascinated by just the world itself, whether it's the things we can't figure out, as we may think is chaos, or it's the things that, we are trying to figure out in the lab or, programming, trying to build algorithms that are defined and precise. So everything in between is, I think, fair game for curiosity. And yeah, that's why we're here.
Fair game for curiosity. I'm gonna write that one down.
Fair game.
All
I
right.
know.
Let's get started. So tell us a little bit about your story, about your journey. How did you get into technology?
Man, yeah, that's I don't know. Where does it start? Where does it stop? I guess in the simplest terms, I have always been curious, I had part of my nature was just, curiosity. I was fascinated by systems, and I remember it kind of started young when my dad, we had a little computer, a PC computer, and when I was a kid, I would play games a lot, and I would work with my dad and try to break these things apart and take apart these, computer systems, right? So at the time, that was just something that, I thought was boring. I was more so interested in playing games. But everything comes together to make the fun experiences. And as I got older, I began to just grow an affinity for um, my curiosity into systems and data systems is where that eventually led me to. Um, yeah, I guess for technology, that's what I can say about it. And then another thing too is that I've always loved being outdoors. And it's something that I think I didn't appreciate enough when I was younger. But, the older I get, the more I appreciate just nature, the environment that we have, the earth that we have, that we still have here with us, right? And that's part of the process of science, and that's part of why we're here on this planet. It's so, you know, we can be propellers of that. We can add to the body of work. We can be more efficient in our dealings, in our interactions on Earth, and with the other systems that we're working with. So, to me, as I was delving into in academia, I was delving into computer science and later specializing in data science. Um, as I was delving into that, I always keep an open mind because I believe knowledge is like a tree. It's always connected. And so, I'd always try to draw references to the other industries and the other activities that I'd be doing, whether it was a philosophical concept that you can apply to just business meetings, on part of negotiation and persuasion. So a lot of things are connected, and technology and nature was one of those two major areas that really aligned and fit for me just given my character and my hobbies. And so the way I look at it, these are theoretical systems being put into applications, and these are applicable systems that are being theorized, right? So you think about technology, and you know, um, we have our computer system theories and our algorithm theories that later on help us build better algorithms through better refinement and research. This is great. But then you look on part of nature, and what we're doing is we're actually trying to reverse engineer the application process. Right. So pretty cool things there. Yeah, so in a nutshell, technology and nature, that's sort of how I got into both and why they're not so estranged to me now, and really I can start linking the two, as we'll get later on to with data and
Yes,
nature.
and I do think that by modeling what's in nature and having a computational understanding of what's in nature and applying that understanding via a model, via a simulation, via the construction of a virtual system, you can learn a lot about what's going on and what should happen. And you touched on a very important point, which is that we still have nature with us, that we still have jungles, that we still have forests, that we still have
Yeah,
oceans.
yeah,
And these are the systems that keep humanity alive. They produce our medicines, they produce the energy we consume, they produce many things that are extremely important. And a computational understanding of nature is a very comprehensive understanding of nature. Um,
I would
so
agree. It's a
yeah,
good
thank
summary.
you. So,
Yeah,
all right. So, what can we learn about nature through data?
that's a good one. That's interesting. What can you learn through data? You know, um, we could possibly break this question down, right? And just look at data itself. What is data? You know, data itself is what we would consider information. These are, um, you could almost consider them little nodes within a bigger chain. And these nodes form together to form actual systems, right? So knowledge in a way is just, a segment and a part of the of our of the way we understand and process the stimuli in our environment. It's sort of like a database, right? And obviously we have, a whole library of data in history, and this is what adds to the body of work. So, you're not just you don't just review knowledge, or you don't just come across it, um, but more so you just are exposed to it, and the goal is to try to add to that body of work. That's why we're here. And so now that we look at data as just a part of a node, well, let's then look at nature. Nature, well, in its many layers, is is comprised of different systems that go together to make a greater ecosystem, right? So essentially, just simply, we have sub-ecosystems within an ecosystem, which is great. So we have nodes within a greater chain. All right. Well, then how do we merge the two? What's the similarities between nature and data, and how can this help us, right? So the only way we can acquire data is through inputs, right? Is through measurement. Data comes by way of tracking. And in order to track, we use tools. This is what humans do. We invent very smart tools to keep tabs on very granular things that are going on in the world and outside the world, right? So this is where we keep pushing to. This is the advancement of science. It's given us better tools to analyze and explore. All this is doing is is just adding to our database, adding to our data sets. It's giving us more stimuli, more information that we can explore and analyze in order to bring about greater insights. Okay, well then, if you look at the process of data exploration and analysis, you will see that the only thing stopping us from drawing such insightful conclusions in computer system theories to something like nature, the only thing that's really stopping us is having the tools that can track and define the parameters that we're looking for that would be useful to analyze and bring about greater insights. So I'm pretty sure, Matt, if we had a tool that um, you could read the growth and development. You could get metrics of the growth and development um, of a forest as it develops. And I do think this technology is actually there for farmers where you can track the soil, you can track the soil conditions over seasons and over time, and that can inform your process on how you cultivate your crops and whatnot. But it's tools like this that help towards gathering information from nature because it's just so raw, right? And it's hard for algorithms to understand why this tree is in this region and why it looks this way and why it's growing in this way and what sort of relationships it'll have with the fungi or the other flora around it. But the better we get at building tools that can give us more precise and derive more information from our external world, the more we can just analyze those tools. So in a way, the only thing stopping us right now from really just, and this is what we're really doing at this point now, we're just creating better systems to track nature, right? Whether in the forms of tools or whether in the form of softwares. And yeah, so by the way, what are your thoughts, man? Because I know this is also something that you're very passionate about, right? So, just starting out, nature and technology, because from your perspective, you're in the field of cybersecurity. And so you're working with, you try to keep your nodes as secure as possible. You try to keep your chain as linked as possible, right? And, just looking out into nature, there's
Yeah.
so much chaos out there, it may seem. Right. So much insecurity and in certain places, so much security. So from your perspective, how do you think about those two and merge
So
those two concepts
it's
of
very
data
interesting.
and
You
nature?
did mention a few very important things, and measurement is very important. Being able to actually acquire that data through the tools that you were talking about is so important. And there are many technologies that measure soil. There are technologies that can predict the growth of an animal based on its genetic sequence. There are technologies that can measure humidity, predict precipitation, measure, analyze the environment
Yep,
from
yep.
a bird's eye view, from satellites. So, why are these things important? I think there was a tribe in Peru. I believe it was Peru, in the area around the Amazon rainforest or the Andes. At this point, I can't remember which, but they truly believed that it was humanity's purpose to be the balancer of nature, the ones who understood how it worked, and the ones who kept everything in check and kept things progressing and kept the overall system interconnected and functioning and balanced. And we look at all this information, we see, okay, it rained today, um, and then a few months ago, there was a drought, and then a few weeks before that, a part of the forest was taken out. So, how can we connect all these data points? And of these three examples that I just mentioned, there are thousands and thousands and thousands and millions and billions that go back all the way to the beginning of time, since before the earth was born. It's important to understand these data points so that we can better manage the systems that surround us, because the earth unfortunately has a ton of natural disasters. It's a beautiful place to live in, and I'm very grateful for it, of course, but we need to learn how to navigate it. It's not always, things are not always smooth. And when you connect
Yeah,
this
yeah.
to cybersecurity, in cybersecurity, we are essentially understanding the patterns of individuals and companies and device emissions and activity in order to detect anomalies. And when we see and analyze the concept of nature, we are looking at it and looking for connections and looking to see where we can improve, where we can benefit. Maybe a certain tree grows a certain kind of fruit that we really enjoy, or a certain kind of animal really really likes building a certain kind of structure that we can learn something from, like beavers and dams and nests from birds, or spider webs from spiders, and us catching different kinds of things. There's so much to learn. And when you apply data science to it, and when you apply computers, and when you create this whole web of activity, and you have a better understanding of everything that's going on, you can gain tremendous insight. And I believe you can manage the system better.
Dude, well said, well said. When you were as you were just finishing out, it brought to mind there's this one organization and there's countless of them, but I'm not sure if you're familiar, you might have come across them, Mossy Earth, but they pretty much do natural conservation campaigns across Europe and in other places, but primarily they're in Europe. A really cool thing that I like about the team is not that they only have naturalists with them, but they have scientists and data scientists with them. And so one thing that has really made them stand out is, given how fast they grew and their support now, they're really doing large scale campaigns as far as the um, geographical area that they have that they can acquire to do their conservation projects. And all this is funded by their members, which is just people from the public. So really cool. But they take things a step further, is that now we can see detailed reports and developments of um, conservation methods in our ecosystem as well. Because what they do is great. Well, yeah, this area is and they had a project they did last year. I think they just finished out, but there was a river that had been there was a dam that was built, but apparently this dam that was built, obviously before that, it was a lush river that had many pathways that led into many regions of that country. But with the dam, this brought about a decrease in the water levels and eventually just completely the riverbeds completely dry, which was, obviously we can see the negative impacts on that on our ecosystem. Great. Well, we have a problem. Well, great. Mossy Earth decided to, work with the government to allow for allow for the dam to be opened every periodically. So every year, I think, every season, they worked it out with the government. And I'll send you a link to the video so you can share that with the viewers as well. But, every season, they open the dam for 20 or 30 days or so, right? It floods the ecosystem. It rehabilitates the ecosystem, and it brings back the plants, the flora, and the fauna that were previously there. And because they can do this in a periodic basis, it means that they can somewhat preserve the natural, a high natural ecosystem generally all year round. But now to get on part with the data. And so when they're, in the field doing all the conservation work, what they're doing is they have scientists who are documenting every step of the process. This works out well for data, but also it works out well for them because they have literally, I think they have about 1 million subscribers on YouTube. But, imagine if only 10% of those were subscribed. That's 1,000 people, that's at least 100,000 people that you need to inform on your progress. And so by way of this is they've sort of cultivated a really great way of documenting and reporting natural conservation processes. And this is something that we don't really see happening at such a rapid scale, like what's happening with Mossy Earth. And there are several, organizations like them. We haven't seen this as much as we have in the past, just due to, just the concepts that we're just iterating. Documentation, measurement, tracking, and being able to explore will essentially lead you to analysis, which then will lead you to greater insights. And all this
And
is documented, right?
it
Um,
preserves
so
it
that's a really
preserves
cool
what's
thing.
important to us, and
Yeah,
those are the insights that we can gain. And we
exactly.
we get we do things in the environment, some that are positive, most that are negative, and we get feedback, and then we need to come up with solutions to restore things. How do we come up with these solutions? How do we understand the relationships
Yep,
between
yep.
the flora, the fauna, the underground mycelium networks, the water levels? Well, we use data. And that is the essential piece. And that's why, well, that's a wonderful application of computers that we can bring to life, and something that we need to bring to life just based on the current state of the world. Uh, so yeah, amazing, amazing. And how do you think technology can benefit nature? Because in some cases it harms nature, like perhaps the dam.
Of course, we would be ignorant not to bring that understanding to the table. Yeah, that comes with awareness. Well said. I'm glad we finally got to this part. Because you think it's always just good and positive with technology, and there's the whole stigma with nature and bringing those two together for maybe capitalistic purposes on part of companies. But in the greater scheme, I really do think there is a synthesis and a cohesion that can happen, and I think it's actually better than if these two fields were dependent. Um, as I don't see I don't see us succeeding in conserving our ecosystem, and I don't see us, well, yeah, I really don't see us succeeding in conserving our ecosystem for the long term if we
Absolutely.
don't
Let me
integrate
just step
wisely with technology.
let me
Um,
just step in
so
there
yeah,
for
I
a
just wanted
second.
to add that in before we
It's
get in here,
it's all a
honestly.
system. The entire earth is a system. And sometimes we sort of decouple ourselves from nature. Oh yeah, nature is over there and we're over here. But at the end of the day, there are
I know,
multiple
right?
interfaces between us and nature, and the foods we consume, the materials we create to build our societies and our structures all affect nature. So the big question is, can we create a system in which the materials that we use for everything from packaging to building homes are is it done in a sustainable way? Is it done in a way that enough ecosystems are conserved? And that's a challenge that needs to be solved today. And we need to restructure our supply chains and restructure all these things that are damaging the earth, and view humanity's interaction with nature as a holistic system and not something that's separate from us. This is a huge scientific challenge. This is a huge rearrangement of resources. This
Yeah.
is a giant economic shift. So, as we move forward, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out and what role the government has, what role private enterprises have, what role startups have, how venture capitalists fund this. And I think it's going to be an extraordinary journey, that an extraordinary mission that I hope gets completed. But again, so how do you think technology can benefit nature? Sorry, I went off
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
little tangent
definitely.
there.
Yeah, well, I think to go into specifics, there was a pretty awesome documentary. I'll try to find it and I'll share it as well. Um, well, there's a pretty awesome documentary that came out. It was due to a study that they did over, 30 or 40 years on some island, or it was about some birds that had migrated from, yeah, it was about some birds that had migrated from South America all the way to the North Pole. I forget the name of the birds right now, but they're really cool. But in our decade, this was one of the first times where we were able to start getting we were able to start making sense of what this animal was doing because we had amassed so much data prior, right? So the cool thing about it is that um, data, right, what it does is it allows us to be able to iterate through information at very, very rapid rates in order to draw trends and insights out of. A little thought process you can do is take a spreadsheet with 10 rows. If I told you to read, let's say there was your grocery list, and I told you to read that out on the spreadsheet, you could probably do that in about 30 seconds. Now, obviously, if you extrapolate the spreadsheet into 1,000 rows, well, you're probably going to take all day just reading what your grocery list is all about. So this is where you can really see where technology has helped advance our scientific endeavors in so many different areas of life because algorithms can't go through data sets. They can process information at way more rapid rates. And so as we measure and get better tools to acquire information on nature, technology will benefit our conservation processes by way of helping us decipher large segmental data sets because generally when you're working in nature, we get into this whole perspective of this is our immediate surrounding, whereas nature is a process that has happened millions of years ago and will still happen millions of years after. So what data do we have that we can pull from, whether it's from 1,000 years back or from 300 years back, you know, but that's the information we have in order to predict as we run them through machine learning models in order to predict what our future outcomes are going to be and what the future temperature is going to be for, next summer or what the climate change expectations are going to be next summer or next decade. This is what the computer models, this is what the training models are trained to work with. It's all the history that we have on this geography, on its natural systems. What information do we have on it? What does the radar say? What does our geographical map say? What does the topography level say? It's like, how much information do we have about this region? Well, we compile all of those, and essentially you can now get predictions of what this region would look like based on all the different systems
And,
and all the different nodes that are working to bring together this thing we call nature. It's really just segmented down into little systems, and technology is really good at just processing those systems and being able
and
to
just to give
then
some
assist towards
examples
faster
of these
predictions
systems,
and faster
we
insights.
have for example, rocks that come off of mountains and make their journeys around the world through wind, and they're also transferred by water. And other processes include how millions of penguins gather to mate on a particular glacier, and
Yeah,
they have their own chemical compositions. And you have the water cycle in the Amazon rainforest, and how much forest there is compared to the amount of rain that is being distributed around the world. And all of these processes are interfacing. And like you said, what we do with data is we capture these processes and we form our models of what the earth could be, or should be, and we move forward from there. And something else that's interesting, um, there's this company called Ohalo that is, and I'll put a link in the description for that too. They're actually taking America's or the world's crops, analyzing their genes and editing their genes to find ways of using less water to grow the plants, of finding ways to grow the plants with less resources, essentially, with less land. And but that's an extraordinary technology.
Let me ask you something, Matt. Now we get now we get into this area. I do want to. I think this is going to be good for the listeners. And it's very relevant too, right? So technology on part of nature. Well, sure, we're just talking about mostly natural systems. Let's focus more a little bit on biology, right? Your most recent statement brought to mind the most recent advancements in cultivating vegan meat through
Yeah,
tissues in a lab.
I've heard
You've come
across. I've
across
come
that.
across a company.
You've come across a
I'm a bit.
study and
I'm a
you've
bit
come across a
skeptical
company
about their
doing this, you know?
ingredients, but
Okay, well then I pose you. Well, come on, don't. I was gonna pose a question to you. Well, you know, essentially, if we could feed the world with bioengineered, so a biological and technology infused process, if we could feed the world with bioengineered meat patties, would we? Because to me, that seems like the perfect fusion of technology and nature, or technology and biology. I only pose you this question just to get some thoughts going. You know, these are some of the questions that we'll be thinking about a little more, I think, relevant as time goes on, as you know, this company really just, you know, established themselves this year. But
okay.
you know, kind of controversial, but nevertheless
I
something
see
definitely worth
absolutely
considering.
no. I
Bioengineered,
see absolutely nothing wrong with
food.
bioengineered food. I
To
think
what
that
level?
if you put together the biological building blocks necessary to fully fully nurture the our nutrient levels, I think it's great. However, I've also seen that a lot of these companies that are doing this are using, or this company, they're using ingredients that are not, they don't look too good. Strange flowers and strange preservatives. I think that as long as you keep things minimally processed and not focus on the profits, which is hard to do. Maybe I'm criticizing. I think I'm criticizing a very difficult challenge
Yeah,
of how
well,
to keep this
yeah,
economical and all of that. But as long as it's clean and it's good, it's truly good for the body, and there are no preservatives in it, I think it's great, and I think it's coming. And I think with our current understanding of food, it can be wonderful, but it needs to be done right.
I agree 100%. You know, I think that was a pretty good summary. Taking a look at both sides. And one thing that stuck out is really it's something we're still figuring out now. I mean,
Yeah.
this is our problems. You know, this is the problems of our age now. You know, probably 500 years ago, they were still figuring out, you know, um, how do we make locomotion faster? How do we prevent disease, or how do we stay healthier? How do we, you know, live longer? And then, you know, we built up um, hygiene and whatnot. And so, yeah, this is the problems of our day and age, right? Dealing with, and you know, it's interesting because technology in a way, it's broad, right? And so let's narrow down. Let's get a bit specific here. I consider technology to be the things that we do not yet know how they work. Case in point, the spoon was once technology, and oil was once technology. Well, that made Rockefeller rich, right? But now the spoon is a household item, and people don't think about oil as technology anymore because it's so common. So, technology in a way is always in every age, and we are dealing with our own, um, with our own, sure you call them problems, but really more opportunities for greater alignment. Because in the greater whole, we can say that, well, we're doing all this because we want to live a more harmonious life. Sure, we want to live a happier life. We want to live a longer life, a more peaceful life. I think this essentially is the feeling that everyone starts out with. You see opportunity in these areas. Um, but it's good, and it's something that we should always consider it being not just in our own age, but we're just dealing with a different perspective of the same problems that people have gone through in all time. And so we can really appreciate then each day that
These
we have
these
here
are
to be
questions
able to
that
explore,
date
analyze,
back
and build.
all the way to the times of Plato and Aristotle, and they have, as you said, persisted, and new evolutions, new iterations, new technologies have come to life, and it's really cool. And I'm looking forward to continue to explore these with you. Um,
And work on
let,
integrating her artwork into the database.
Thank you for joining, everyone.
Bro, yeah, come
It's
on, let's
been
go.
a very interesting
Hey,
conversation.
thanks for
Hopefully, we're
joining,
going to have more
everyone.
in the future. To everyone who's curious, to everyone who's interested, let's keep exploring the planet. Let's keep learning, and let's design systems, lifestyles, supply chains that will benefit everyone and create happy lives for us all. Have an excellent day.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Have a great one, everyone.